Hello everyone. Today's video we relax with a story about a place that everyone has heard of, but few people can imagine the hell it really is. The Wild West Saloons. Sounds fun, right? A bustling place. Harmonicas playing in the oil lamps. Alcohol flowing like a stream. Men and women laughing and talking happily. But if you really lived there, you would realize that this is one of the places worst to survive, let alone enjoy. First, imagine you walk into a niche tavern in New Mexico around 1873. As the door opens, a thick cloud of cigarette and cigar smoke fills your nostrils. Your eyes sting, and your ears ring from the noise of the card tables, the shattering of glasses, the yelling of curses, and the heavy footsteps of a drunken man staggering and banging his chair against the wall. You struggle through the cramped room, covered in sawdust that's been spread across the floor to soak up fresh blood when someone's been stabbed or shot, not for decoration, but to keep from slipping on the blood. A bar stool seems empty, and you take a seat. But as you sit, a bearded guy behind you slams his glass on the table and roars, "That's mine." There's no reservation sign, no mediator. You stand up, give way, try to smile. But in the West, kindness is often mistaken for weakness. A few eyes in the bar start to notice. You become an easy target. Then you order a whiskey. It's called whiskey, but it can be anything. Alcohol diluted with industrial alcohol, gasoline, even old gunpowder. One will get you drunk. Two will make you blind. The bartenders are untrained. There are no standards. They just mix whatever's left in the barrel and sell it to you for double the price if you look pickpocket friendly. Waitresses, they're not just bar staff. They pour drinks, sell their bodies, and act as the eyes and ears of gangs. Some are kidnapped from the East and forced to work to pay off their immigration debts. Don't even think about flirting. If you buy her a drink without tipping the bouncer in the corner, you'll probably be knocked out after the first drink. The atmosphere in the bar? Stuffy, damp, infested with bedbugs. There might be 2 or 3 fights a night, at least one shooting. Sometimes it was over cheating at cards, sometimes over looking each other the wrong way, or simply because a drunk made up an excuse to shoot someone. No one intervened. If there was a sheriff, he was drinking with the troublemakers. And let's be honest, the legal system here is a joke. If you get stabbed in a bar, it's usually your fault, friend. Because who told you to sit there? Who told you to talk to that girl? Who told you to walk in just as he was walking out? The law of the West is simple. Whoever shoots faster is right. Whoever survives is innocent. And the music. It sounds romantic, but the piano in the corner is often out of tune, with missing keys, rusty strings, and the player too drunk to stand. Instead of a smooth classical piece, you'll hear intermittent clatter, interspersed with the sound of someone vomiting behind the counter. If you think you're going to sit and drink and watch the sunset like in the movies, let me warn you. The windows of pubs are often shot out and covered with cardboard or dried cowhide. The sunset is beautiful outside, but inside you're being bitten by mosquitoes. The smell of urine is coming from the makeshift wooden crate toilets in the back, which no one cleans, and rats are a common sight. And the strange thing is, everyone goes to the bar knowing how bad it is, because there's nowhere else for them to go. It is a place to sign contracts, find work, gather information, or simply not to feel lonely. But the price to pay for that connection is not small at all. You're sitting in a bar, your eyes scanning everyone around you, not because you want to start a fight, but simply because if you don't look closely, the person next to you might pull out a gun before you can react. Eyes are weapons here. A misdirected glance, an off-key smile, even a friendly nod to the wrong person can end your life in an instant. You'd think the people in the bar would come here to relax. Nope. They come here like wild animals licking their wounds, but are always ready to bite their neighbors. The general feeling is tense, stifling, and as brittle as an overstretched guitar string. If you don't believe me, sit down near a card table. Poker in the Wild West was more than a game. It was a bloody ritual. Players didn't laugh, didn't joke, just stared at each other with the eyes of hungry wolves. The few gold or silver coins on the table were life-saving assets, maybe the last meal for the family, or stolen money. And if someone was caught cheating, no evidence needed, just suspicion. Then shooting someone in the face was a reasonable solution. Then there are the drunks. Well, most of the bar's customers, really. You can't tell if it's the guy drinking alone because his wife left him, the murderer on the run, or the veteran suffering from PTSD. They all have the same look, glazed eyes, shaky hands, and their breath smells like cheat booze mixed with something else. 1 second they're crying and complaining. The next they're smashing a bottle over your head because your laugh sounds like the guy who stole my horse last year. Have you thought about calling the police? Sorry, but the cops here, if there are any, are usually either drunker than you are, or in business with a gang. Some even work as bouncers in bars, taking a cut of the gambling or prostitution. You report them, they'll ask, "Do you have a gun?" If not, they'll smile and say, "Take care of yourself." And if you're a woman walking into a bar, prepare to be viewed as a commodity. No matter what you're wearing or who you're with, the men in the bar will strip you bare the moment you step through the door. Some will offer you drinks, others will approach without asking your name. And if you refuse, they may follow you back to your boarding house, or worse, lurk in the back alleys. What laws protect you? None. Witnesses. They'll see nothing. Besides, the tavern was a hub of gossip and intrigue. Who was wanted? Who had just been murdered in the gold mines? Who was hiding gold in a secret compartment under the counter? All the stories started with a drink, and sometimes ended in blood. If you blurted out about your wealth, or bragged about having a land surveyor friend, you could have your throat slit in the inn tomorrow morning, and no one would know why. Even the bartenders themselves are a menace. Don't think they just pour drinks. They know who has money, who's on the run, who's vulnerable. One bartender once poisoned his customers with something called elk's breath, a mysterious cocktail of industrial alcohol, sugar syrup, and a little opium that left them unconscious for hours. When they woke up, they'd been stripped of their belongings, their horses gone, and had a tiny scar behind their ear that had come from nowhere. Even the food in the pubs was no better. You order hot beans? Good, if you like flies, horsehair, and the occasional rat's claw. The kitchens and pubs were unsanitary. The chef was often an ex-con or a guy who had been unemployed for too long, hired because he knew how to cook something that wouldn't kill you instantly. But that don't kill you instantly would leave you with 3 days of stomach pain and diarrhea, all while carrying a gun, not to mention the toilet. Not a restroom, as you might think. It's a wooden box behind the shop, temporarily covered with a piece of cloth or rotten wood. The stench is so strong you have to hold your breath. At night, this place is often a den for rats, snakes, or drug addicts who sleep there. Some people have gone in there and never come out. No one cares. In fact, if you want to understand why life in a Western saloon was so bad, you only need to remember one thing. It was not a place for entertainment. It was a place where people hit rock bottom, physically, mentally, and morally, and were forced to return every day because they had no other choice. Think you can live a peaceful life in a Wild West saloon by just staying out of trouble? Unfortunately, trouble abounds here to come to you, even if you're just sitting there. Here's something no one tells you. West Country saloons aren't just bad hangouts. They're stages where people play the part of thugs, saints, and victims, all at the same time. Sometimes you would see a stranger walk into the bar, carrying a leather bag, dirty boots, and a murderous look in his eyes. No one knew who he was, where he came from, but within a few hours, he became the center of attention. Maybe it was because he was so quiet, or because he looked at everyone as if he was choosing a target to kill first. No one dared to talk to him, but everyone knew in their hearts he was preparing for something. Tension spread like a smoldering fire in a barrel of gunpowder, and then, with just one touch of the gun at his waist, Everything exploded. Gunshots rang out. Wine glasses shattered. A man collapsed on the ground. He walked away. No one chased him. No one cried. The police didn't come. That's just what happened per week. The tavern becomes a place where death is part of the service. You may see a sign that says, "No guns allowed on the premises." But that's just a ploy to legitimize murder. Because if you bring a gun in and someone shoots you and says, "He was trying to rob you," you're the one at fault. And if you don't bring a gun in, you're the prey. Either way, you lose. In some towns, the taverns were taken over by local gangs. They made their own rules. Who could drink, who couldn't sit near the window, who had to pay first, who had to order hard liquor. If you didn't comply, you could be dragged out and beaten to death. Or worse, lost forever down the alley. There was a secret term used. Meat shop. Refers to people whose whereabouts are unknown after entering. Then there was the betting. The betting tables in the back of the tavern were the scene of all sorts of organized bloodshed. Bullfighting, cockfighting, ear-biting, arm wrestling to the death. The bettors were enthusiastic, while the participants could be prisoners, poor immigrants lured into gambling, or people forced to play to pay off debts. Sometimes the losers didn't have to pay, because they weren't alive to pay. Have you heard of the term temporary death for hire? In some places, if you run out of money for drinks or get into a fight in a bar, you'll be sold for a few days to work for free for the bar owner or his gang. You could be forced to mine, transport contraband, or even join in raids on other towns as an unwilling mercenary. And if you don't do enough missions, they'll send you tow a part of your body about the pub as a warning to the next person. Even the bar owners, you think they're victims? No, they're part of the system. Some bar owners hoard opium, hide guns in the cellar, rent rooms to gangs planning bank robberies. They know who's who, who's on the run, who's wanted, and they use that information to make trades. You need 2 bottles of whiskey? Sure, for the name and address of the gunman who left town yesterday. In many cases, the tavern was more than just a social gathering place. It was the town's command center. You didn't just go there to drink, but to find out who had just died, who was about to be murdered, who was carrying gold, and who might be trapped that night. People in the West didn't trust the authorities. They trusted the bartenders and bar girls because they were real people standing right in front of them, and they could sell their lives for the right price. And you, the one who accidentally entered the bar out of curiosity, you are the most delicious bait. New, fragrant, without connections, without protection, without understanding the rules. You are easily fooled, easily trusting, easily drinking the wrong glass of wine. And most importantly, you will not be remembered when you disappear. A coachman once said a very true sentence. A Western saloon doesn't need a back door, because once you go in, you usually don't come out again. There's something that's often forgotten about the Wild West, loneliness. And the saloon, which might seem like a place to find some human company in the desert, is actually a place where loneliness ferments into despair. In the flickering oil lamps, amid the lonely clinking of glasses and the piercing sounds of banjos, there are souls with nothing left to lose. And therefore, they're not afraid to take anything from you. You think the music in Western saloons is for entertainment? Not entirely, but not entirely. Songs played on a rickety piano are often used as distractions, to cover up the sound of a sneaky gunshot, to distract while you draw your knife, or simply to calm the nerves before an outburst. Once, in a New Mexico bar, a gunman hit the first shot with a piano, and before anyone knew it, 3 people were down, and he was quietly out the back door. The music here is an art. It's a smokescreen covering the filth. Many people also forget that the West Country saloons were not just places for drinking. They were centers of all kinds of evil: prostitution, human trafficking, post-Civil War slavery. You would see young girls standing by the stairs, smiling fake smiles, eyes downcast, not because they were shy, but because they were calculating who to invite. They had no choice. They were sold into the trade at 13 or 14 years old, in exchange for food, a place to sleep, or simply because my mother owed me money for liquor. And not everyone had their pick of the customers. Those who didn't make it in a night could be beaten, starved, or worse, thrown out on the street like old junk. Some prostitutes tried to escape, only to be caught and hung upside down outside the bar doors as a vivid warning. Their names? No one remembers. They were known by nicknames like Broken Horse, Red Eyes, or Ragged Doll. The story of children in taverns is also something no one wants to talk about, but you need to know to understand the extent of the decay. Many are orphans or outcasts who are raised in taverns, learning to mix drinks, listen to customers curse, clean up blood on the floor, and even be grown up before they turn 10. Childhood doesn't exist here. These children live longer than they are and die sooner than you think. The atmosphere of the taverns also reflected the decaying nature of the West. You think of rustic, cozy wooden rooms? The reality is that ceilings leak. Windows are riddled with holes. Tables and chairs are wobbly. And the ground smells of sweat, gunpowder, and urine. Many taverns don't even have private rooms for customers. Just a curtained loft that anyone who wants to go in can pay and climb up. Privacy is a luxury, and cleanliness is absurd. A common story is that some old gunslingers chose to spend their final years in bars, not because they liked it, but because it was worse out there. They sat there every day, drinking cheap liquor, recounting gunfights that no one cared about, and then quietly died in their chairs. Sometimes their bodies were not discovered for 2 to 3 days, because people thought they were sleeping. Bars became silent graveyards for people who were not remembered. No one loved. The strange thing is, as terrible as it is, the Western Saloon is still the main gathering place in town. Marriages, fights, division of inheritance, business discussions, all happen there. Because outside is the desert, the wind blowing sand in the eyes, the crooked wooden houses. But inside the saloon, at least there's fire. There are people talking, and there is alcohol. Westerners do not choose the saloon because they like it, but because they have nowhere else to go. And you know what hurts the most? When you get used to it. When the curses become the soundtrack. When the smell of alcohol mixed with blood no longer makes you sick. When you start remembering the names of the disgusting patrons sitting in the corner. That's when you realize you've been swallowed up by this place. The Wild West doesn't kill you right away. It slowly rots you from the inside out. And the saloon is that grinning mouth, inviting you in. You think, after all, if you're smart enough, careful enough, and don't drink, you'll be fine. But life in a Western saloon isn't just about the drinks. It's a long-running psychological game, and you always lose. Simply because you're the only one with feelings. Here, people lose their emotions to survive. They don't laugh because they're happy, but because they need to be strong. They don't cry because they're sad, but because they're faking it to beg for mercy. You walk into the bar with a beating heart, but after a few nights, you find yourself faking it too. You learn to lie like it's true, nod at the most pathetic things, and laugh at bloodshed like it's a comedy. And if you don't adapt, you end up slumped over the bar. But if you survive a few days, can you leave? Not so easily. The bar has no contract, but it does have something called unwritten debts. You've been drinking without paying, sleeping on the wooden floor of the warehouse, having a barmaid help you escape a fight. Those small favors are now an invisible noose around your neck. Once you're in, you'll always be missing something, and the barkeeper will never let you forget. There were those who tried to leave the tavern, not by the main road, but by burning it down. They thought that if they destroyed the place, they would be free. But sadly, they only managed to burn down the ground floor before the townspeople tied them up. Because you forget, the tavern is the lifeblood of the place. It is more than just a building. It is a generator of money, power, information, and fear. Burning down the tavern is like burning down the heart of the town, and you will be crushed. Another scary thing, and one that few people notice, is that bars have memories, not in the way of cameras or diaries, but in the way of word of mouth. Your every move is recorded in words. Who you beat, what you drank, who you sat with, when you laughed. All of it is repeated, embellished, and spread like legend. By the time you return to a bar in another town, people know who you are, and not in a good way. Don't think you can start over. In the West, reputation spreads faster than fire. Once you've had blood on your hands in one saloon, you are a man of the dark everywhere else. You walk in, and eyes are on you, not out of curiosity, but because people are assessing you. How scary are you? Are you easy to trap? And if you're killed, who's going to come looking for you? Worse still are the trap bars, which sound like a normal town, with a new bar, a cheerful bartender, and cheap drinks. But they're places set up just to prey on people like you. You sit down, relieved that you found a comfortable place. But no, you've just walked into a wolf's nest. From the bartender to the next customer, everyone is watching you like the last prey of the day. If you let your guard down, you'll lose everything. Money, stuff, or even your real name. Some lucky ones escaped, living in seclusion or heading east. But even when they told their stories, no one believed them. They were no longer themselves. Their eyes were glazed. Their hands shook. Their stories were incoherent and silent. They had carried the Wild West with them in their minds, and it would never leave them. Someone once asked, if the bar is so terrible, why do people still go there? The answer is, because it is the only place with lights on at night. Because between the slow death of loneliness and the quick death of violence, people usually choose the second. And you, who are imagining a warm glass of whiskey under the yellow lights with soft music, perhaps you still don't understand. In the West, the only thing that stays warm is blood. And if it's not yours, it's the next person's. If you're still here, listening to the end, congratulations. You've survived in theory, at least. Because in reality, if you were to walk into a Wild West saloon, like the one we've just described, the chances of you coming out alive are extremely slim. Not because you're weak or naive, but because that world isn't meant for you. You see, the bad things in Western saloons don't come all at once. They creep in slowly, like the smell of alcohol in your hair, like the smell of blood in your hardwood floors. You don't get stabbed to death for saying the wrong thing. You get the wrong look. You don't get punched in the face for being drunk. You get the wrong person. Things are decided not by rules, but by instinct. And often, the instincts of people that revolve around three things: to survive, to conquer, and to dominate. You see, the saloon in the West was more than a place to sell alcohol. It was a place where power was exchanged, where fear was hidden, where underground deals were made, where women were commodified and men were drained of their souls. It was the cultural center of a time when culture was the cocking of a gun, the glance before the stab, the half-smile before the betrayal. We can sit here in modern times, turn on the air conditioning, sip coffee, and look back at that era with a bit of romance. Cowboys riding horses into the sunset, melodious music in wooden saloons, raucous laughter echoing through saloon doors. But the truth is, if you were actually there, you would beg to return to this era, where you had the right to remain silent, had clean toilets, had the protection of the law, and most importantly, had a chance to live until tomorrow. The Wild West was never a place for the weak, nor was it really a place for the strong. It was a place for those ruthless enough to survive, or lucky enough to go unnoticed. And if you were neither, you were just a name remembered from a bloodstain on a saloon floor. So if you've ever dreamed of living in the Old West, galloping through the fields, stopping at a saloon and clinking whiskey glasses with cowboys, hopefully you've kept that dream to the movies. Because if you walked into a real saloon from that era, your dreams would end faster than a glass hitting the floor. Thank you all so much for joining me on this journey today. I hope that after this video, you will have a more realistic view of the Wild West, where even a drink can be the last thing you drink in your life. See you in the next video. Have a nice evening. And remember, not all times in history are worth returning to.